What is going on, YouTube? Thank you for tuning in for another vlog episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a few different things, and there's going to be some big changes made. As you can see, I've added some more plant life into this enclosure, and as I was doing so, I discovered something unfortunate. So I took out the little pond section and I planted this big bamboo palm here, and I was going to do some nice little reels for it. But as I was planting it, I was thinking that the soil seemed extra wet, which I wasn't that stoked about. And as I got in here and looked, it was very, very wet underneath. And I peeled back the barrier, looked underneath, and it appears that it's flooded. Now, my misting system doesn't go off all that much. I try for around 3 days, but I do it manually. But what I noticed last time that it was on was the nozzles were dripping down and have eroded part of it. Now, from past experience, what I've found is that if you concentrate the location that the water's dripping, it tends to cause issues. And so we have a dilemma. And how are we going to fix it? As you can see, our girl is sitting here and she's fine, but my rule is that the animals always come first, regardless of the workload. So I think the place I'd like to start, I'm going to have to strip it. I've already accepted that. But I figure I may as well take note of the things that I like, the things that I don't, and do a lot more work to this enclosure than I expected. But first things first, I'm going to have to strip it down. It's going to be a full substrate change. I'm going to mix this substrate through the new substrate just because there'll be a lot of biological life in there. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down and I'm going to put a drain in this enclosure. Now, this is something that I have been planning to do with future enclosures. I've got a design in mind that incorporates a drain, but this is a prime example that it's going to be important. So we may as well start here, I guess, and get it underway. Things that I like about this enclosure, this section here, the bamboo thicket, nice and lush, love that. Love this big branch, and she does too. I like this stump here. Obviously, the Ficus benjamine is just fantastic. The creeping fig and the Buddha head, love them. What I don't like is in behind all these ferns, there's actually a big cave and she never uses it. I put it there so if she wanted to get away and out of sight she could, but honestly, never in there. And that's on both sides, so that's a bit of wasted space. Don't love that. Not 100% sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but I'm sure we can come up with something. I want to do some running water in here. As you guys know, I love my running water and I feel like it brings out a lot of natural behaviors. So I'm going to put a little mini pond in here, bigger than the one that was in there. And I'll do a separate video on exactly how that's built because that's been a few requested. It's been requested a few times now, I guess, and I figure I may as well do that. The thing I hate about this enclosure is this back wall. It is, in my opinion, just bare, ugly. You can see there that I had some moss there at one point. The top of these shells I feel like could be a bit better. So they're the main areas that I want to improve on. This spot down here doesn't seem to grow plants very well. I might put some different plants down in this corner. Whereas this side grows really well. The only thing that concerns me is, are these plants growing that well because of the amount of water that's sitting in the bottom? In which case you might be thinking, well, why not just get rid of it? But it's seeping up into the substrate. And when I started digging around, I was getting that really methane sort of smell coming up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a photo of this enclosure and sketch in the locations of things that I want to change and come up with some ideas of things that I want to try. But before I can do that, this disaster of a room from working on everything needs to be cleaned up. So first things first, I guess, here's the cleanup. Then we might go down and get some more plants from Bunnings and go from there. Okay, if only cleaning was always that fast, right? Now, you're going to see why I don't handle Eris very often. Now, she's not really, inside of her enclosure, a stressy snake. She's always very aware, but she never strikes at the glass. If you're inside her enclosure, she'll generally check you out, and if you're in there for too long annoying her, then she will give you a tag. And yeah, she's just, the way I put it is, she does not like being touched. That's fine. I wish that it was different, because she is a really beautiful animal and I would like to be able to handle her more often, but she doesn't enjoy it. And despite all of the work that I've put in to calm her down, it's just not something that she likes, and I just put that down to personality. She's one of my few animals that was a pet shop purchase. But yeah, you'll see how she reacts. I'm going to move her into a temporary enclosure. But at the same time, for the future of doing educational sort of things, she'll be a good opportunity to show people what a defensive animal looks like. And bring people's awareness, because I see a lot of people get jungle pythons and they really do not know what they're in for. They're not all like it, but unless you really concentrate on getting an animal that has a good temperament, a lot of them can be like her. And people get in way over their heads because they're a really beautiful species, but they are not for beginners by any means. Let's just get a few obstacles out the way. And she's already very, very alert, wanting to know what is going on. Okay. You can see her there. She's already not very happy. It's alright, girl. She's actually behaving quite good today, but you can see she is super duper alert. And you can call me a pussy for the glove all you want, but I've taken bites from her before, and she's a very, very strong animal. Beautiful though, absolutely stunning. So I'm going to go get her in a temporary enclosure while I work on this one, and then we'll be back. Okay, with Eris moved into a temporary enclosure and out the way, it's time to start stripping. So I've got one container for the plants, one container for the substrate that's coming out. It's really painful. I really did not want to strip this enclosure down, but it is what it is. Now, something I did notice was these have started like actually adhering to some of the hardscape, which is pretty cool. Let's have a look, pull this out and see exactly how much. Oh wow, look at that. That's really cool. Big leaves, really starting to give that shingling effect. The Buddha head. You can see what I mean though, look how muddy that is, that's not good. It's aging nicely though. I did a little paint job on this to give it that sort of aged effect. But that will definitely be going back in. I said that was for dirt and I've started putting hardscape in it. Oh well. Alright, let's go. The other creeping fig. No signs of root rot or anything. Definitely not doing as good as the other one. So I've taken my photos so I know what plants are doing well where. So I might actually put this one, when we rescape it, back with that one and fill that space out even more. I shouldn't put these in here. Let's bit of dead dead moss that can get mixed in. Bits of wood and stuff. So I'm happy for all this sort of stuff to get mixed back in to really give that naturalistic look. So might not snap that one, might leave that one. Nice big rocks and stuff. But like that, should not be that wet. Get all this bamboo out. Really do love how the bamboo looks. So definitely be using that again. So this will be a good look at sort of what's worked and what hasn't. As this enclosure hasn't been stripped down in quite some time. And a lot of the things that I do are somewhat experimental, which, now it's a little controversial, but I'm never doing anything that will harm the animal. Unfortunately, that one did not survive. Now, this is a plant called Dracaena anita. They're extremely hard to find in Australia. And they generally do quite well. See, that one's gotten root rot and come off. There's a couple of small roots there. Yeah, I love them in enclosures, but very, very difficult to find. They're the same as the big one in the extra large vivarium. Oh wow, that's sodden. But I'm thinking I might actually take it out of this enclosure and propagate it, because I'm simply not able to find them easily enough to use them as much as I would like. So considering this one has died off and was a bit of a rescue mission, when we had our carpets done, I had to break down all my enclosures, and that was one of the plants that did not bounce back, unfortunately. So I think I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to propagate it so we can get more plants in the future, which is going to be a long process, but well worth it, because when they are thriving, they are incredible. This plant's actually done pretty good. This is a parlor palm, which apparently likes wet conditions because it's putting out new plants. Alright, that's good to know. So I haven't had roaring success with that plant in the past. See, here's another Anita. And this one here has died off. But I'm not going to break it away. I might just cut it because it is actually attached. But see, in the past, this root system here, I've had that spanning half the enclosure. So that's really not doing as good as it could be. So save that for another day. There's another parlor palm. Now this one might be suffering due to the fact that it was tucked under a bit out of the light. It's definitely not as wet under there. But like, you can see what I mean here. That's, I actually expected that to drip, but like, it is really, really wet. And this big, beautiful plant is one that I've wanted to try for ages. So I want to get this back in here as quickly as possible. This is a bamboo palm. It's a native species of palm to Australia, as far as I know, from the research that I've done. And it is a really nice looking plant, and when mixed with the bamboo offcuts, I'm hoping it's going to give that really nice natural look. Okay. I'm going to have to use both of these containers for plants, I think. I've already filled one. Okay, let's have a look. These are all kind of interlocked. I remember putting these in. It was a bit of a mission. Pull this out. Really love this piece of hardscape. It's really cool. See, this palm's not done. Look at that, it's all just falling apart. So that's not done well at all. It's died right off. I really strongly doubt that will make a comeback. So we'll get rid of that. That's it. This back section is all underwater as well. Now, Ficus benjamina. The most well-established plant in here, and yet even this does not have an extensive root system. Now, I don't know a ton about this plant, but I would have expected, considering how full that is, that to have more roots. So I'm almost wondering if it's got the beginnings of root rot. Hopefully that is not the case, and it makes a full recovery because it's kind of the feature plant of this enclosure. Now these are all willow branches which have seen better days, but they looked good for quite a while. So the water bowl, which only fill up every now and then because most of the time she just uses it as a toilet. My hydration for my guys is more about the misting than anything nowadays, but what I have started doing is creating catch points and using the water features, some spider webs. But the other thing I'm noticing is I'm not seeing any isopods or anything. Wondering if they've drowned out due to it being so wet, or are they hiding? Oh, lots of spider webs under this. Let's turn this upside down and have a look. We got a widow of some kind. I'm seeing some life in here now. Some earthworms. seeing lots of springtails, sort of centipede in there. So there is still life in here, which is good. That's good to see. Some earthworms in there. Alright, hopefully that widow just stays in this. I think I'll put this one back in. I do like this piece. And clearly, so do the bugs. What a swamp. That's unfortunate. But oh well, let's look at the positives. I get to redo it and take away the bits that I don't like. And we're just going to hope that the plants bounce back. Alright, I'm going to go get another container and get this substrate out of here. Alright, got myself a bucket, got myself a scoop. Let's start getting this out of here. Something I'm noticing is the soil itself actually doesn't smell bad. That's probably why we haven't actually run into too many issues with it yet. If left like this, it would 100% start going anaerobic and having issues. The smell that I noticed when I first found it was actually once I started lifting up the weed barrier. This is actually going to be another good thing. These weed barriers were an experiment as well. They are a coir matting and they will break down. So I think I'd have to check, but I reckon this enclosure, when I put them in, it would have been about a year ago or maybe a little bit less. So we'll see how it's held up. I know in the big enclosure it had started to disintegrate in a few spots. Oh, found some more earthworms. I'm going to try and be quick here because we're going out to lunch today. I'm squeezing this in. Would just like to get it underway so I can hopefully finish it tonight and get her back in here. Something that I really try and force myself to do, which can be hard with the amount of workload I take on, is I do try and make Sundays, while Sundays I usually work my day job to be honest, but I swapped with someone at work. They asked me for a favour, so I swapped with them and worked Saturday instead, but whatever day that I have off on the weekends, I try and make sure that I set it aside for myself. Not only to make sure that I'm not neglecting the husbandry of my animals, but for my mental health. Burnout's a real thing, and I really walk the tight for it. We have a joke in our household that we don't burn the candle at both ends. We threw that sucker in the fire months ago. So it is important to make sure to set time aside for yourself, and I try and make weekends serve that purpose for me, which it can be a mental struggle to do so when you know how much work you've got to get done, but if you do nothing but work, you're going to burn yourself out. You're not going to enjoy the hobby. And there's another another centipede. Wow, I forgot how much substrate I put in here. Let's see, let's go and put these plants on top. Set them up here. Maybe temporarily plant them in here so they don't fall over. So yeah, working hard's fantastic, but make sure you're making time for yourself so you don't burn out. And if you've got so many animals that keeping them is unenjoyable, then I would strongly encourage you to consider cutting back, which I don't say that lightly. I'm not a believer of rehoming animals in general. It really quite annoys me when people buy and sell animals too often. Let's see, it started to disintegrate there, just like in the big enclosure. What I'm interested in is, has that allowed substrate through? Because as I've spoken about on many of the podcasts, my enclosures are melamine that are then sealed. And I haven't had any enclosures themselves leak, and they generally hold up quite well. The only thing I did notice in the big enclosure, I used fiberglass fly screen, and that had let silt through, and as the water had gone through, and I'm talking like over a few years, but that damp silt sitting on the melamine was the only water damage that I could see. There was some sagging and some rippling. Pretty sure, it's hard to remember, but looking at this, it is. I used charcoal in this. So it was drainage layer, charcoal layer, and substrate, which might be why the substrate isn't rotting. This charcoal works as a purifier. It absorbs a lot of good bacteria, which then combats the bad bacteria. Okay, that's most of the substrate out. But yeah, as I was saying, make sure you're making time for yourself, making time to enjoy your hobby, because you're the only one that can. And I mean make time. Time's not going to just appear. We've all got the same amount of time. It is up to you to make the time for the things that matter to you. And for me, this stuff is what matters to me. This and my family. So it can be quite the task to do that, but I think it's very, very important. See, now I'm seeing lots of life. I'm seeing little baby centipedes, I'm seeing earthworms, and all in all, this matting's actually held up really well. So I think I will be using this again. The reason I used this matting was something that John Courtney Smith said in a podcast. And for those of you that don't know, John Courtney Smith is one of the head people look at that water. So this was the issue. The head people of Arcadia, and one of the things that he said was he doesn't like barriers between the drainage layer and the substrate because the plants can't put their roots through to get to the water underneath. Look at that, it's an absolute swimming pool. Not what I wanted. I don't think it's been like it for very long though. Because the weed matting hasn't all gone rotten. Let's see if I can fold this in a way that I don't make too much of a mess. It is falling apart in my hands though. Look at that, earthworms. That's pretty cool. So I'll chuck them in there, because like I said, I am going to... Jesus. I am going to reuse all this. Minus the barrier. I will get fresh stuff for that. But yeah, the thing he was saying is he doesn't like using fiberglass mesh and whatnot due to plants not being able to get their roots through it to the water. And that sort of got me thinking a bit on other options, because like I said, I had issues with the fiberglass anyway, letting silt through and causing some damage, so I wanted to try something different. And as a weed matting, this stuff had terrible reviews. People were saying the weeds grew straight through it, that when they were pulling weeds out, they were pulling chunks of weed mat out, and they didn't like it. But those reviews basically told me that it was going to do exactly what I wanted it to do. And let that happen. Now, you can see here, I put plastic down so if silt did get through, it wasn't sitting directly on the melamine. Although all this water sitting directly on the melamine is not good either. Okay, so I'm going to have to get the wet dry vacuum all this water out. That's a lot more. No wonder I wasn't able to just suck it out through a corner. And I'm going to need yet another container for the Leica, which we will reuse as well. But for now, I think time-wise, I'm just going to drain the water out of this, and we'll leave it here. And I'll make a second video about rescaping it, starting with the digital design using the photos that I took, and you can sort of see the process that I use to work through it. So thanks for tuning in. I know it's been a bit of a rambling sort of a episode, but yeah, we've got to show the good and the bad. This has proven to me that I want drains in my enclosures, because this didn't happen overnight. That's been like that for a bit. It's probably why the plants were doing so well, because they were able to access that water and they were getting a sufficient amount of water. But can't have that sitting in there going anaerobic. So my plan is put a drain and have a drip tray underneath that I change and check regularly. Drip tray, I can just use the wet vac to drain that, so I won't have to pull it out and spill it everywhere all the time. But it's a pretty inexpensive fix to this problem. And yeah, like I said, my big plans for the future I'm going to be creating a system where it's going to have built-in drainage. And I'm going to have it in a way that I can have it rain for an hour straight if I want. And it will not just completely destroy the system, because seeing these guys react to the misting system and drink and all the rest of it, I feel like rain is something that we shouldn't necessarily be depriving them of. They clearly prefer that sort of a hydration system. It's become very, very clear to me, and it's something that I want to continue doing. So if this is going to be the reaction, then we need to fix that. I am pretty interested to check my other enclosures now and see if it's a problem with, maybe I've just got too many misting nozzles in this. Maybe they were dripping a lot more than I expected. Yeah. So I'll have to check the other enclosures and see if they have done the same thing or not. Hopefully not, because I don't want to strip every single one of my enclosures. But yeah, we will come back with a second episode, I think. And we'll cover up this back wall that I really don't like. I've got some ideas on how to do that without it taking too long, because I don't want it out of this enclosure for too long. I don't have another enclosure that is a suitable size for it to be fair for her to be in for a long period of time. So yeah, not sure what to do about this space here either. It's too shaded for plants to grow. So I don't know if I build up some sort of an embankment of rock, and I mean, she doesn't use the floor space anyway. Maybe I can build up like an embankment of rock rather than it be a cave, and then in between the rocks plant some more epiphytic sort of types of plants. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think for this area here, I want to start incorporating more uprights. And then from in between those, have plants growing. Something that I saw on the YouTube channel Newbies Reptiles or Newbies Wildlife. But yeah, he did it in an enclosure of his. And it looked really, really good. And it was something that he didn't have to glue in place. He just made bases for them and they were freestanding. Another idea I've had is to hang them. Put little eyelets in the top, put some screws in the ceiling and hang them. I think that'll work. But I'll have to go through the hardscape that I've got because I am starting to run low. It's been absolutely miserable weather here, so I haven't been able to get up and get more. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. I will see you on the next one, and it shouldn't be long before I bring out the video rescaping this, and then I'll also bring out a separate video. I want to do some ponds. I think that'll be best off done in a separate video because a lot of people are interested in how to do it themselves. So I'm going to show you guys a nice, easy, cheap, simple way to achieve a running pond in your enclosure. Alright, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.